Let's talk about the biggest problem with the New York Giants. It's not Russell Wilson. It's Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator with this organization. He has been a terrible defensive coordinator. Now let's rewind for a second. When we go back to that first year with Brian Dable, Shane Bowen was not his defensive coordinator. It was Wink Martindale. They made the NFL playoffs off the legs of Saquon and the same of Daniel Jones on the offensive end. They did not have a number one wide receiver that was consistent, and they even won a playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. But their defense was very underrated. Wink Martindale did a very good job with developing players and scheming up pressure week in and week out. And when he could not get home with his original front four to front five guys, he would just send in a bunch of blitz packages, and everyone on the outside, you account for your own man. They were aggressive. Did they get beat? Sure, they did. They let up a lot of big plays on the back end. But they were not letting up plays like how we see right now with Shane Bowen. And no defense is perfect. You're not going to go out there in today's game and just only allow the opposing offense to only have 200 yards a game. You're going to have some bumps and some bruises on the way on the defensive end. But when you look at Shane Bowen, he hasn't had one good defensive year with this organization, and yet he still has a job with the New York Giants. And I blame Brian Dable for this. Brian Dable hired this man. He got into a lot of disagreements behind the scenes with Wink Martindale. They always bumped heads. But one final argument, Wink Martindale said, you know what? I'm done. Let me go. Now he's the defensive coordinator for Michigan at the college level, and he's doing a solid job in my opinion. But Shane Bowen has been terrible, and it's more than just the last two games against the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Commanders. Before we touch on those games, and trust me, we will, let's talk about Shane Bowen from last season. Sure, they had a top passing defense, but their rushing defense was atrocious. They were 27th in rushing defense. They have never ranked over 25th with him calling defensive plays. They can't stop the run. And listen to the names that you have on this roster. And I understand Dexter Lawrence missed time last year dealing with an injury. But even when he was in the lineup, you still had problems stopping the run. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the game. One of the best defensive players in general. He's a superstar. You traded a second and fifth round pick for Brian Burns, who was a very good and consistent pass rusher with the Carolina Panthers. He has 3 sacks on the season. He's doing his job. Bobby Okereke, you brought him in from free agency a few years ago from the Indianapolis Colts. He's a run stopper. He was a very good player with Indy. He's a highly paid linebacker with this roster. And also compared to other linebackers at this position in the NFL. So he's a good player. You drafted Kayvon Thibodeau in the first round a few years ago with Evan Neal. We know that Evan Neal isn't a good player, but Kayvon Thibodeau, he has been a bit of a disappointment coming out of Oregon, but he's not a terrible player. When you selected him in the top 5, you're hoping that he could be the next TJ Watt, Myles Garrett type. He's far from that, but at the same time, he's not a bum. He can get to the quarterback. He can have splash plays. His motor has always been in question. He's far from a bust. He just hasn't lived up to that hype. But you expect for him to be better. They can move him around more, something that Shane Bowen hates to do. And you have Abdul Carter, who you selected this year in the first round, who could be a tremendous pass rusher if you use him correctly. More on that in a second with how they used him against the Washington Commanders in week 1. You bring in Paulson Adebo. He's a highly paid cornerback. Now, last year, he did suffer an injury with the New Orleans Saints. And he was a holding machine before he got injured. But years prior, he was a very good cornerback on the back end of that defense and man-to-man coverage. That's his specialty. He's not a zone cover corner. Deonte Banks, he's only had one good season in the NFL coming out of Maryland. Was a very good player his rookie year with Wink Martindale because they play a lot of man coverage up in the wide receiver's face week in and week out. And he hasn't been the same player since then. He was a first-round pick. Javon Holland, a very good safety from the Miami Dolphins, and Tyler Nubin, who you also selected highly in the NFL draft. So there's no excuse to why this defense should be this bad because you have talent. Shane Bowen is one of the worst defensive coordinators, if not the worst defensive coordinator in the NFL. When you're 27th against the run last year, they've never ranked over 25th with him calling defensive plays against the run. That's terrible. And a lot of teams last year, they say, you know what we're going to do? We're not going to pass the football as much. We'll just run the football over and over again. You even have quarterbacks going out there and getting huge chunk yards. Look at what happened last year with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's not known for his legs. He had a 50-yard touchdown on this defense. There's no gap responsibility. They don't contain the edges at all. This is a soft defense play calling wise. Literally, they just sit everyone back. They're not aggressive. The players aren't soft. The coaching is. He doesn't move players around. Abdul Carter had the highest pressure rate for a New York Giant in the first half against the Washington Commanders. So what does he do in the second half? He primarily uses him as a spy against Jaden Daniels. That man has the potential to be your best pass rusher on this defense. He has the potential to be your best defender. And yet he's a spy for majority of the second half. You let him put his hand in the dirt and you let him get to the quarterback on a consistent basis. And Shane Bowen admitted this in a press conference that he wanted more athleticism out there to watch Jaden Daniels. And yet that did not stop the run, because against the Washington Commanders, they allowed 432 yards of total offense on the day, 6.6 yards per play, 32 carries for 220 rushing yards, 7 yards a carry, 0 turnovers. And essentially you got blown out in that matchup. Now, they got swept underneath the rug because so many people in the national media, they want to blame Russell Wilson. They're saying that Russell Wilson couldn't step up. Could we see Jackson Dart next week? And I came out with a video and I said, pump the brakes. Jackson Dart is not ready just yet. This defense has major problems. Only for them to go against the Dallas Cowboys. And you can't blame this loss on Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson played one of his best games in his career. Russ was 30 of 41, 450 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. And may I add this, Andrew Thomas, your best tackle, was not playing in this matchup. He's missed the last 2 weeks, and yet Russell Wilson did that. You would think that you won this matchup, but you didn't. You lost this game against the Dallas Cowboys. We can talk about the interception that Russell Wilson had. It was a bad interception, sure, but you lost this game 40-37. If you score 30-plus points in the NFL, that should be a guaranteed win, especially with how the New York Giants played on Sunday. Malik Neighbors looked phenomenal. And we know that he's a baller based off of last season. He's a true number one. Darius Slayton, he's going out there. He's making big time plays. And Russell Wilson is constantly throwing the football deep down the field over and over again. But you know what Dak Prescott did? He was 38 of 52, 343 passing yards. You allow 478 yards of total offense, 6 yards per play. You did have a turnover in this matchup. And that's a good thing. But you allow 5 yards a carry with 135 rushing yards. What good is a turnover if you're going to allow the opposing team to score 40 points in that game? It's unacceptable. And Shane Bowen should not be the defensive coordinator for this upcoming week against Kansas City. If you think that Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys gave you problems, imagine what Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to do this Sunday night. Brian Daboll should have fired this man as soon as that game was over with, but he's still in this roster because Brian Daboll is a close friend with him. And this may be the last year with Brian Daboll. And I hope that it is the case because he's also holding this team back. Bad decisions week in and week out. You squandered that opportunity last week to defeat the Dallas Cowboys. And it came down to a crazy field goal kick by the kicker. But you should have had this game won. Let's look at this play for a second. This one play would tell you everything. The Dallas Cowboys are down by 3. We're late in the fourth quarter. Look at everyone that is playing off with this defense. The Dallas Cowboys still have 3 timeouts, by the way. 3. It's not like there's just 2 seconds left in the game and they're going to go into Hail Mary situation. Then you back everyone up on the goal line and you say prevent defense. This is a shade of prevent defense, but it's a little bit different. Your safeties are 20 yards back. Your corners are 12 yards back. Your linebackers are 10 yards back. So everything underneath is going to be open. All Dak Prescott had to do was to get the ball to the tight end, get the ball to the slot wide receiver. Bam, they're in field goal range. That's bad defensive coaching. These players, they do not call plays, but the coaches do. And Brian Daboll allowed this to happen as a head coach. This was a terrible formation late in this ball game when you had the go-ahead touchdown from Russell Wilson to Malik Neighbors. And you have 14 seconds left with 3 timeouts. That's an eternity for a red-hot quarterback in Dak Prescott. He doesn't blitz. He doesn't play man coverage. And I understand if you did not have the personnel to play this coverage. But you do with the cornerbacks that you have. And Deonte Banks, right now, he may be a bust, but I feel bad for him. Because this man was having a very good career and a very good year until Shane Bowen came over and before he became defensive coordinator. Oddly enough, he would actually be a solid defensive coordinator with the Miami Dolphins. They don't have the cornerbacks to play that man coverage over and over again. They play a lot of soft coverage. He would be a perfect fit with the Dolphins. But with the New York Giants, with the pass rushers that you have, if you get beat deep, you have enough talent that can help you out on the back end with Javon Holland. And at the same time, if you move players around like Abdul Carter, you let him put his hand in the dirt and let him constantly get to the quarterback. The same with Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, and Brian Burns. You could constantly get to the quarterback on a consistent basis. You're not going to see it happen with Shane Bowen because he's too conservative. And everyone knows this about sports. If you play not to lose, 10 times out of 10, you're going to lose that game. Be aggressive and let your cornerbacks live on the island. You can even play aggressive cover 2 man. We've seen the Philadelphia Eagles do this with Vic Fangio. Aggressive cover 2. They'll have those cornerbacks in the wide receiver's face. If they get beat over the top, you have a safety over the top, or even 2 safeties because it's cover 2. If it's cover 1, you have the single high safety. He can help you out. They even had this with Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney did not put up the numbers with the Packers. You look at the numbers that he put up with the Green Bay Packers. He never did that with the New York Giants because they used him differently. You have to use these players to their strengths. That's what elite coaches do. Shane Bowen is far from that. He's not even a good coach. And yet they still go out there. They play this soft coverage over and over again. They don't even play aggressive coverage on 3rd down and short because he comes out with these generic play calls over and over again. He was terrible with the Tennessee Titans and he's terrible with the New York Giants. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't win a game until they fire Shane Bowen on the defensive end. And I'm not trying to place all this on Shane Bowen because I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's up to the players to make plays. That is true. They had 11 missed tackles against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday. That's unacceptable. That has nothing to do with Shane Bowen. That has everything to do with the players. Go out there and tackle the running back in space. And with so many plays with Javonte Williams, he's running up the middle of the field. Bobby Okereke, you need to be better. The same with the safeties. Come down, tackle the man. Dexter Lawrence, he's doing his job. The same with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. They're making plays in space, but they need those guys on the back end to also make plays. But it's hard to go out there and meet the running back in a point of attack if we're playing so far off. But that last play against the Dallas Cowboys is unacceptable. He should have been fired as soon as the game was over with. And we've seen organizations do this. Look at what happened last year with Dennis Allen. The New Orleans Saints, they lost to the Carolina Panthers. They fired him and the news broke the next day. Matt Eberflus and the Chicago Bears, they fired him after the Thanksgiving Day game. The next day, they had a new interim coach. Let the linebackers coach call plays. Let the secondary coach call plays. Anyone else besides Shane Bowen. But I was so upset when I went back and I watched this game. And I saw how the New York Giants lost. It's no shame in losing to the Dallas Cowboys with all the injuries that the Giants had. But it's the way that you lost against this team. And you had all that momentum. And you can just see Malik Neighbors' face and the same with Russell Wilson. They were so dejected after the game because they did everything right to win that matchup. They did everything perfect. They ran every route the correct way. Russell Wilson made every read perfectly for the most part, except for that bad interception. And for everyone to come out in week 1 and to say Russ isn't doing his job, is all on Russell Wilson when the man was pressured on majority of his dropbacks. And yes, you win against a weak defense in the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not saying that Russell Wilson is going to be the answer for the entire season because this conversation will carry over to Brian Dable. You put in Jackson Dart in the matchup, but Russell Wilson was playing well. If Russ is playing well, Jackson Dart should never see the field, not even as a scrambler. And he lost yardage on that play. Let him sit back, let him develop. Do not rush this situation. But I understand this is a coach. He's feeling that hot seat right now. And the same with Shane Bowen and the same with Joe Shane. But at the end of the day, the New York Giants should be 1-1. But unfortunately, they're not. And the coaches let them down. More so on the defensive end than the offensive end. But let me know in the comment section below. How do you feel about the New York Giants and should they fire Shane Bowen? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.